Welcome back to the channel. Thank you to those, a big thank you to those who have donated to the channel. It is much appreciated. Today we will be talking about beams, deck beams and ship modeling, because this is one of the things that, well, first of all, I was asked about it. I was asked to talk about this. And second, because I frequently see errors in this sphere, not only among less experienced modelers and kit assemblers, but even among otherwise outstandingly good models. I do see things that jar my eyes immediately. So let's talk a little bit about this today. What is the normal construction sequence, how this is arranged, and what things should be taken into consideration. First of all, rules and regulations guided the use of beams and the location of beams. As a general rule, every third frame on a ship, in other words, every molded frame has a beam on it. The sizes of beams are proportionate to the dimensions of the vessel and to the class of the vessel, and to a large extent how frequent the beams are also depends on how heavy the artillery to be carried on deck is going to be. The beams are doing two major things, I should say. The one, obviously, they are providing the basis on which you nail the deck for the crew to walk around and to waterproof the vessel. But their even more important task is to hold the ship together, to close it and prevent the sides from spreading out. There is variation in the spacing of beams. It can be every third, it can be every fourth frame. More often than not, however, it is the third frame that carries major beams. For any but the smallest vessels, this, however, is still too far apart to secure watertight deck, because the planks between the beams are going to play. Even if you do not have cannon on deck, the twisting of the vessel, the working of the ship will start rubbing, the timbers will be shifting against each other. So how do you prevent the planking from working and spitting the caulking out and therefore rendering the vessel no longer watertight? That is where the ledges come into play. Between the beams, there is a number of much smaller beams that usually stretch just between longitudinal carlings that connect the beams and the side of the vessel. They are significantly smaller in dimensions. The specific dimensions depend on the side of the vessel and the proportions and rules that are in use. That, of course, is covered in great detail in the books of the famous ship modeler David Anshaw, and especially in his practicum on the construction of the sloops of war, of the Swan class, to use a modern term that would have meant practically nothing to the contemporary shipwrights. These ledges can vary in numbers between a low of 2 and a high of 4. Personally, I have never seen more than this ledges. Their task is to stiffen the deck, to prevent the planks from working against each other, and therefore retaining the caulking material and water tightness. The heavier the artillery, the larger the beams are going to be. Generally speaking, there will be a beam also under a gun port to absorb the recoil of heavy cannon. The smaller cannon, of course, more easily dealt with aboard vessel. So how does this tie with ship modeling? Well, it ties in the following way. In many instances, I see hatches hanging apparently into the nothingness. I see mast partners that do not appear to be supported by beams. And in other places, I see a very, very underlined marking of the bolts or the nails or the spikes used to hold the deck into the beams to nailing it. And people truly overdo this. I'm not even going to discuss the cases in which all planks of the deck are ending up in a line where the edges of the planks are so heavily blackened to allegedly imitate caulking that this is the first thing that you see dark black spots all over the ship that look like a zebra has gone mad. That is neither accurate nor attractive to the eye. The beams, the nailing pattern should actually be understated, not overstated. They should be barely visible. And in reality, on a real ship, they actually are not visible at all. And certainly not underwater. But the thing is, hatches are always, the fore and aft combings of the hatches are lying on beams. The fore and aft timbers are lying on carlings, which are lighter timbers that are positioned between the beams, usually notched into the beams. They're oriented fore and aft, while the ledges are transversal, in other words, parallel to the beams. The same, of course, is true for mast partners. Any such opening, any such interruption of the regular run of the deck is going to be framed either with beams, with half beams, or with ledges, and will be lying on carlings and beams. In fact, this summer we were able to discover one of the hatches, really a scuttle, on the Cape of Duvizarek, and that also is attached. The forward combing of the hatch is attached to a major through beam of the vessel. The aft is on a secondary beam, and the two sides appear to have been on carlings. Although they remain unexcavated, we need to finish the recording in the following season, and that part of the deck is heavily damaged. So let's look a little bit at this example. This, of course, is Oles Pegasus model, which for a while was under active construction. At the moment, other models have to take priority over this one. So, what do we see? Although I'm very far from criticizing how the model is constructed, it is beautiful, it is enjoyable. You can see the beams, you can see how the hatch is. Here is one beam, here is the other one, and you see that the hatch is mounted directly where it should be. The opening for the riding bits, again, is matching with the beam. The foremast partners also are between beams, just as it should be. What is my one criticism here? Well, on the positive side, as you can see, none of the seams between the planks are exaggerated. You do not see this horrible dominant blackening, as if you have driven that in scale. Looks like you have half a meter with caulking material. Here it is understated. The same is true for the openings for the spikes or nails or trunnels or whatever was used on the original ship. They are perhaps a little too strongly visible for my taste, but compared to many other examples, they are understated. And that is how they should be. What is the sole criticism that I can make? Well, only the major beams are nailed. What about the ledges? There should be 3 ledges between them. Where are they? Why are they not marked? And this is something that you see universally on ship models, even very high-end, including original models, by the way. Why is this done? Well, purely for visual enjoyment of the wreck. Because if you really do it properly to scale, and you apply fasteners to every single ledge and carling that is going to be there, it will look like the ship has suffered from the smallpox. And that is not a view that I particularly enjoy. So beams are in proportion to the rules and regulations that guided the construction of the vessel. Their specific location, their specific dimensions depend, of course, on the type of vessel. To some extent, they also depend on the tradition of shipbuilding. In the Black Sea Map project, we were able to record quite a few, 64 to be exact, shipwrecks, significant numbers of which are of the post-medieval period, that is to say early modern 18th, from 17th through the beginning of the 19th century ships. And in many places, the beams are actually visible. So, if in Western tradition vessels you have major beams positioned every third, fourth frame or thereabouts, with ledges in between, in the Eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea tradition, you see it done in a slightly different way. This is visible on the brigs that my colleague and good friend Dr. Dragomir Gerbov is working on for publication. You see it on the bombarders that he is about to publish also, and you see it on some of the traditional Ottoman vessels. There we see very thickly positioned, very closely positioned, much smaller and uniform dimensions beams, without any ledges or carving strengthening the deck. Simply the beams are positioned so closely that there is no need for ledges at all. This is an expensive way to deal with the situation because you are using more massive beams, even if they are smaller than the individual beams would be in Western tradition. It is very clear that the master shipwrights working in this area did not know the meaning of the word shipbuilding timber shortage. And that we see throughout the archaeological record, including the wrecks that we have before excavated and the one that we are currently excavating in the Black Sea. They are massive timbers. There is massive wastage of good quality timber that the Western shipwrights are no longer willing to waste in the same way. They are modifying it. They are trying to do it in an easier way. Yeah, the master shipwright here is coming to keep me company, I see, and to keep me on track and prevent me from making bad mistakes while discussing ship construction. The same, so how do you secure the beams? Obviously they lie on beam shelves and or beam clamp. These are terms that are synonymous. You can use either clamp or shelf, but please do not use clamp shelf, which I see so many times, even among archaeologists. It makes me want to cry. This is pure case of tautology and is no term whatsoever in any language known to humanity. Returning to the subject, so the clamp is into what the beams are usually notched. Most often this is some kind of a dovetail joint that is cut there, but additionally the timbers are secured with lodging and hanging knees, and on large vessels when the need arises, even with standard knees, which are on top of the beam vertically. There are exceptions to this rule, of course. The War of 1812 brigs that Professor Kevin Chrisman has recorded and published quite extensively and in detail, they do not have knees at all. And that is because they were built in about 20 days each. They were emergency program. They were designed and built for one single battle. If the battle was won by the Americans, then they were strong enough. No need to have great longevity. If they were lost to the British, then, as one of the American shipwrights said, well, in that case, they were good enough for the enemy. In Ottoman seafaring and in the Black Sea, at least, we see fairly few knees being used in comparison with Western vessels. Part of the reason, of course, is that we're not dealing with warships. None of these vessels are warships. And part of the reason is that they are fairly small in size and are not intended to sail long distance over great oceans. With this, I think that we have covered the subject of beams at about as great a detail as they deserve. And I would wish you a most wonderful rest of the day. By all means, comment, ask questions. Whenever I'm back from the field and have the time to catch up on the comments and answer them, I will absolutely do so to the best of my abilities. And by all means, leave ideas, videos that you want us to film together, and we shall be happy to do our best as a team. Thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you for sponsoring this channel. It helps immensely and is an encouragement to continue filming. And do believe me, I need the encouragement to continue filming, since it is taking quite a bit of time that otherwise I can dedicate to writing and ship reconstruction. With this, I wish you a wonderful Sunday, and I'll see you soon again. Thank you.